I'd like to call the Guilford Select Board meeting to order. As chair of the Guilford Select Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to Addendum 6, Executive Order 01-20 and Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, I confirm that we are, one, providing public access to the meeting by video conference with additional access offered through telephone. We are using Google Meet for this remote meeting. All members of the Guilford Select Board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if desired, participate in this meeting by going to https://meet.google.com/JSI-NCUA-CMN, or by calling the following number, 617-675-4444. 2, providing public notice of instructions for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access the meeting using the information that I just gave you. And we've also posted it on guilfordvermont.net, the town's website. 3, providing a mechanism to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please telephone 603-558-0891. And finally, 4, continuing the meeting if necessary in the event the public is unable to access. It will be continued to a time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting will be done by roll call. Let's start the meeting by taking the roll call of our select board. Is Rusty Marine here?
Here.
Is Veranda Porch here?
I am here.
Michael Becker?
Here.
Zahn Eastis?
Here.
Hi, Zahn. Richard Wazansky here. We're all here. Yippee. Okay. Rules, and we would like to recognize the public, but those who are attending or are not select board members, like to introduce yourselves, please. By raising your hand. Sheila was first. You're on mute, Sheila.
Okay, I know. I just unmuted. Sheila, Finance Advisory Committee resident.
And Leslie?
Hi, Leslie Mallowan, Guilford resident, town auditor.
Okay. Wanda?
Wanda Tomaluk, town resident.
Sarah?
Sarah Coffey, Guilford resident, and here wearing my hat as the state rep.
Great. Do I have Leslie?
Nope, you already did me.
You forgot Marley.
Marley, want to introduce yourself?
Hi,
for the
Marley
minutes?
Rabinowitz, Guilford resident, Conservation Commission.
Welcome all. Thank you for attending our meeting. The rules of procedure, there are rules that govern the interaction of the public with the select board. Peter Rood has those on his desk, and if there are any questions about it, we can ask Peter to inform us of the correct and appropriate way for you to interact and the select board to interact with you. Are there any additions to our meeting tonight?
I have none, Richard.
All right. Are there any changes to oh, Zahn, you do. No, were you raising your hands on?
Yes.
You're on mute.
Yes, I'm off mute now.
Okay.
Seeing Peter's note about the dog issue in town, do we need to talk about it?
I was thinking that we would talk about that in another time. We have a really full agenda, and I will catch us all up tomorrow. And if necessary, we'll have a telephone meeting or on that. Is that satisfactory?
Of course.
Okay, great. Any other changes, suggestions?
I have none.
All right, I assume that the select board has read the minutes, and I'm looking for a motion for approval or denial.
Richard?
Yes?
I think reading the minutes, there was a sentence that's not ended in section 7E3. It starts reading something recommended, and then there's a period with no
When did you
dation.
look, when did you read those?
Today, just now, actually, I went back and looked just
Okay,
now.
because I edited them later late this afternoon, but maybe I missed
So
something.
maybe it's just not on the website.
Okay, let's note that though. Could you tell us where that is again, please?
Hold on one second. Uh, 7E3. He also discussed in a letter to be sent to the dog owner that he would recommend. So I'm not sure if
Okay.
that's an unfinished sentence or something that wasn't
Richard
said.
edited that sentence earlier.
Yeah,
This
I fixed
afternoon.
that, Sheila.
Okay, thanks.
It was fixed.
Yep. So do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Zahn has motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Rusty seconded it. Are there any discussion? I shall call the roll then. Zahn,
Aye.
Rusty,
Aye.
Veranda,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Richard, aye. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Peter, do you have a report on the highway?
Yep, I have a very brief report. I spoke with Danny last week, and the road crew has been grading roads since the snow hasn't been too bad. They've been cleaning culverts. Thankfully, they've only had a few minor repairs, and they've been spending a majority of their time cutting trees and brush, particularly in West Guilford. And that's all he had to say.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or discussions about the highway report? Very good. Moving on to new business. Town Meeting Day 2021, which is a substantial topic for us to be thinking about. I know that Sarah's here to add some information, but if I could frame this just quickly for us, it's very unlikely that there will be a in-person meeting for a town meeting this year, given that if the governor's executive orders are in place at that time, which there's no reason to think that they won't be, we will have difficulty having an in-person meeting because of the social distancing measures and the measures of capacity in the room. I guess we could do it if we found a much larger room where people could be appropriately social distance. So that's part of what we have to discuss. And it seems that we have a decision to make about whether to reschedule the town meeting, to find another location for the town meeting that would meet the governor's executive, the COVID restrictions in place, or to have a town meeting by Australian ballot. Is this where you want to jump in, Sarah? Is your news okay? Help us through with the context of this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Richard. You set the context. I think this issue around town meeting is on all of our minds. And we've been hearing a lot as legislators about it. And I just wanted to share with you some of the work the plans that are ahead, because I think to do some of the changes that you're describing require legislative action. So during this very brief off session, the House and Senate GovOps committees have been getting together and have been working closely with the Vermont City of Leagues and Towns, the Secretary of State, Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association, and our Legislative Council to draft a bill that would authorize an alternative town meeting, some alternative town meeting procedures for 2021. And this will be one of the first things that we take up when we return in January. And I can tell you a little bit about the specifics, but I'll tell you the goal is that we get this passed through both chambers and onto the governor's desk by January 19th, so that that can be signed into law and it will be effective in time for municipalities to do the necessary things that they need to do with regard to warnings and making decisions. So
I have a
go
question,
ahead.
Sarah.
Yeah.
We've been following the Vermont League of City and Towns write-ups on this, fact
Right.
sheets, and the fact sheet on town meeting COVID-19 FAQs that I have in front of me basically says that these changes are already in place
Not all of them.
legislatively.
No, I think they might, I'm not looking at the document, but let me tell you what's in this draft legislation. I think we need to, the legislature, in order for certain things to happen for you all, we need to take some action. So let me just run through we're trying to keep this bill very simple so that it passes through pretty quickly. And I just want to say we're very fortunate in Windham County. We have strong representation with Senator White as the chair of the Senate GovOps and Representative John Gannon as the vice chair of the House GovOps. So this bill, as it's currently drafted, would authorize municipalities to move the date of their 2021 annual town meeting. It would municipalities to mail out Australian ballots for use in the 2021 annual meeting because there typically are budgets to approve, often select board members to elect, and so forth. Third, it would specify that the terms of elected board members will continue until a successor is chosen, if you choose to go that route. And fourth, would permit the Secretary of State to issue supplemental election procedures to protect the health and safety of voters, election workers, and candidates. So I think it sounds to me that you're working already really closely with the Vermont City Leagues and Towns, so this is not news or a surprise, but I just wanted to let you know that it is in the works. And I also wanted to let you know that while I can't promise on behalf of the governor, but the governor's office has signaled that they will include additional funding within the budget adjustment to aid municipalities and the additional expenses of mailing out Australian ballots should they choose to do so.
Right.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the executive branch, but I just wanted to share that's the signal that has been sent. And that's something that we do. The budget adjustment is, at midway through the FY21 budget, which we are currently in 6 months in, we do, look at the budgeted versus actual expenses and their adjustments made. So it's really a bookkeeping exercise, to say it in layman's terms, and it's usually something that is taken up at the very top of the session and under normal conditions passes pretty quickly by the beginning of February, so that because the Appropriations Committee needs to start on the budgeting process for the next fiscal year. So
if
I just wanted,
given that information, if we were planning for the select board to make a decision tonight, given that information, can we make our decision and it would be conditional on the governor's on the governor's orders? Peter, did you want to add? Or
yeah, I just had a question for Sarah, because now is what you just stated, Sarah, is that to make it a permanent change to enable municipalities to do that? Because my understanding was that the passage of Act 162 temporarily permitted municipalities to adopt the Australian ballot system, and many have already done so they can start the preparations to get that ready. Right.
So I think if I'm understanding you correctly, Peter, your question is whether this new legislation will be permanent legislation. The answer is no. It's the idea is that it's emergency legislation specifically for, while we're in this state of emergency, to address the conditions of town meeting during the pandemic. Does that answer your question?
It answers half of it, yes, because the other half was that I thought that Act 162 already authorized select boards to make this decision.
I know it's a question that I've asked too, and the answer that I've gotten is no, that's why we need to pass this legislation to enable our municipalities to do this for this upcoming town meeting.
Okay.
It does, to clarify, things like the legislation that we did pass did allow for things like, I know, for example, our town, our planning commission has a town plan, in process, and they had some questions about being able to pass that in a hearing, a virtual hearing, online versus in person, and that would fall under the provisions that we prepared earlier. But town meeting is a little bit separate. But the hope is that I think that we wanted to give our municipalities some confidence in how they can move forward, so that it's not a last minute surprise.
So it sounds to me that like we could vote and it would be conditional on the governor's legislation, on the legislation coming in January.
I think I'll leave that decision up to you, but yes, I would say, it would be the legislation that gets enacted, and then also whether there's money, I can't promise how much that money will be for supporting towns. That's a thin ice, but I think the idea is that they've calculated it based on postage, that what the cost would be for mailing out Australian ballots. So,
okay. So, what do I have any comments from? So, what I think that we can go forward with what the intention of having this on the agenda is, which is to make a decision. And now, the decision is conditional, which would be I only see it as two options, but I guess there are three options. One is to move to Australian ballot. The second one is to reschedule the town meeting. The third one would be to find a building in our town that has the capacity to follow the social distancing guidelines, the masking guidelines, and guidelines. So you would have to have a quite accessible hand washing stations there. Do I hear what does the select board think? Yes, Rusty.
I think we should go with the Australian ballot just due to the fact that you don't know what's going to happen with COVID. It could get worse, it could get better, and you can't really, are we going to keep putting it off until it goes away or?
Okay. Veranda, would you like to express an opinion?
Well, I think it's highly unrealistic to find a place where we could hold a town meeting safely. That seems impossible to me. And
I agree.
To move the time of the town meeting, while I value town meeting, it also seems problematic. My concern about the Australian ballot is that I wish that we had the opportunity to communicate more directly with our residents about the issues. So
yes, well,
that's all.
Our intention, and Wanda's here to actually gather information for the Guilford Gazette. So that would, but our intention would be to advertise this very heavily, because it would have to be advertised very heavily so that everyone would know. We'd have to use every means of communication, including possibly, Peter and I have discussed, sending out a postcard to all residents in the town, which would, we could accomplish two things with that. That's further down on our agenda. But one thing we would accomplish is talking about the Australian ballot, if that is what the select board votes on, and also to reiterate what the current masking rule recommendation of the select board is in our town, and also reiterate the social distancing regulations as well as the hand washing regulations. So we could accomplish a lot with one postcard if that's the way we want to go. But that's only, and then we would of course put it on the we would use every means of communication to get that out to our town. Zahn, do you have an opinion? You're on mute.
Yeah. No, I don't really have an opinion. I'm sorry.
Okay, Michael?
Everything I've heard so far sounds reasonable. I was thinking there's no building larger than the gym or more suitable. I'm inclined to not sort of push it further down, into the summer. I think we should stay on schedule, and I'm in favor of Australian ballot.
Okay. Good.
And also, and lastly, just a big information campaign or at least a postcard.
Yeah, no, it would be more than a postcard. It would be every means that we have at our back to communicate throughout the town. Sheila, did you want to add something?
I wondered what the practical impact is of postponing it until April or the beginning of May. Is there, a month or 2 months? I don't know if it has an impact on taxes. It probably wouldn't have an impact on budget. It doesn't have an impact on how much money we transfer to social services or anything like that, because we're still in the same fiscal year. So I didn't know. I mean, I think by holding Australian ballot, we lose a lot of community participation. And that is one of the things that people seem to appreciate most about town meeting day and the town meeting event. And as much as we communicate, there are always people that don't understand, don't get it, don't get the communications, et cetera. So,
thank you for that opinion. Yes, Sarah.
I just wanted to offer something, we still can have pre-town meeting, which is a wonderful tradition in Guilford. And maybe to address, I hear what Sheila's saying, town meeting as an institution is really important in our community. But if I've been holding a lot of meetings with constituents on Zoom, and people are increasingly more comfortable with it, like young and old. And so if in your communication you were to emphasize the pre-town meeting, my understanding is that the Grange is planning on hosting a virtual pre-town meeting as usual. I'm a member of the Grange, and I saw that in the most recent meeting minutes, and there several of you are Grange members too. But that could be a wonderful thing to get people more exercised and in that habit. And that might be an opportunity, while there's not voting, but just to talk about the different issues that are going to be.
And according to the VLCT fact sheet, that we have to have an informational meeting if we go to Australian ballot, and according to the VLCT fact sheet, it's already been legislated that the informational meeting can happen remotely.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Peter, did you want to add something?
You already touched on it, Richard. Thank you.
Okay. Miranda, yes?
I'm wondering, if we do go ahead with Australian ballot, and I had been thinking about pre-town meeting, but I wonder if in our select board meetings, or a few of them anyway, between the new year and the virtual town meeting, or if we're going to have even a town meeting, that people can attend and do the voting. I'm wondering if we could just devote a little bit of time to discussion of different issues, just to try to use our own meetings to take, let's say, 15 minutes and focus on some issue that people might be confused about, that they'll be voting on.
Excellent. That's a good idea. Thank you, Miranda. Any further discussion?
I just wanted clarification. If we go to an Australian ballot, are we actually going to have some kind of Zoom meeting or some congregate meeting?
Yes, the informational meeting is mandated. So if we go to Australian ballot, we have to have a Zoom meeting of as many town people to attend as possible.
but not on town meeting day.
No, it has to come before
Wow.
town meeting day.
Bummer.
Is that meeting the pre-town meeting?
I guess we could make it that.
As long as that is a warned meeting by the
Yes.
select board and not a meeting of the Broadbrook Grange. They can also, I've heard through a variety of channels that many towns are having multiple informational meetings.
Mhm.
So that Guilford could maintain pre-town meeting as sponsored by the Grange, and then there could be an additional meeting that's an official warned meeting by the select board.
Yeah,
So we could have two to engage as many people as we can.
good thought. Okay, I think we're ready to take a vote then. So do I have a motion?
I move we go to the Australian ballot for town meeting day.
Okay, Rusty has moved to go to our Australian ballot.
I'll second.
Michael seconds. Is there any further discussion? All right, I'll take the roll then. Zahn,
Aye.
Rusty,
Aye.
Veranda,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Richard, aye. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. That's a tough one, but I think in my mind that we've made the correct decision. We don't know how long this pandemic is going to go on, how many restrictions we're going to have, and for how long that they're going to last. So thank you very much for making it as informed and easily done as we have done it. Okay, our next item on the agenda is discussion of the select board role in amplifying state COVID guidelines. This was initially brought to our attention by Veranda, and Peter and I then had a discussion about it, of how we could, actually it was brought by a town resident who wanted to make it clear to residents in the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust apartment complex that there was a masking recommendation, because that's all we could do in Guilford. A very strong recommendation for people to wear masks in public places. And there was a resident who felt that, I think it was her mother who was in that building, and she saw people walking without masks. So we wondered what we might do to amplify the select board's recommendation and other COVID-19 legislation and restrictions. Peter and I came up with a couple that I'd like to present to you. One was this postcard, which we could use to both announce the Australian ballot. Another one was to put it on the Guilford website. And one was to send a letter to anyone who owns an apartment, apartments or apartment complexes in Guilford, letting them know or emphasizing the fact that the select board had made a recommendation for masking in public places. So I'm wanting to know how that sits with you and whether you have any further recommendation. Did I get it all, Peter? What we discussed?
Yes, Richard, that's correct.
Yeah.
What's your what's the, so I mean, they all sound like good ideas. I was just thinking about the letter option 3. Why send it only to landlords and not all residents?
Well, that all resident, we would be sort of emphasizing it. For instance, the Wyndham Windsor Trust is not a Guilford establishment, although they own property and have apartments in Guilford.
We're trying to get in touch with
apartment
parties
building.
outside
Another
of Guilford.
apartment building in Guilford is also owned by a non-Guilford resident.
Okay, so that's to contact people that don't live in town.
Correct.
Right, who have who have apartment,
Gotcha.
who own apartments in the town.
So let me understand this properly. So the letter would go to landlords for them to urge their tenants
Yes.
to wear masks. That's what the letter
would
would say.
remind them of the Guilford Select Board's recommendation, mask wearing in public, for the basic aspects of that recommendation that we passed. We only passed a recommendation. That's all we can do. But we would remind them that there is a recommendation, and a serious one, in the town of Guilford. So that would be to the landlords.
And as Richard noted, ACCD, or the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, does have specific guidelines that are requirements for congregate housing at this time. So that's beyond as Richard noted, the select board would just be encouraging those who own congregate housing to make themselves familiar with that regulation.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it, Peter.
To make themselves familiar with it and also to support the enforcement of it in some way.
I don't think we can support the enforcement of it.
To ask the landlords to communicate with their residents.
Yes, that's the nature of it. Yep.
Can we do that?
Yes, we can send a letter. We can send a letter saying that we'd like to remind you that the Guilford Select Board passed this recommendation and that the Housing Authority has regulations in place for masking in public places. We're not acting as a law enforcement agency. We're just acting as a town, and Peter and I have seen that other towns have done this, have reminded folks in their town of what the select board has done and what the state regulations are.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention that the governor has been asking municipalities to pass on the message of guidelines that have been either recommended or passed by the state. So
right,
you're not acting as a police force and you're going to be knocking on doors, but just reminding folks of what the state has encouraged or asked us to do.
And we're responding to the safety concerns brought to the select board by our residents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're
Exactly.
asking us for help.
Yeah. Any further discussion? I don't think that we need. I can't hear you. Hello?
That's
Were you-
muted.
I'm sorry, we have a very bad connection.
There we go.
There's some feedback.
Okay, so I don't think that we need to motion on this, Peter, do we?
Well, there were three options presented. Are we pursuing all of them, or I'm in favor of all of them if we can have the resources.
I mean, so I think that the options are viable. I was wondering whether we needed to vote on this.
At minimum, I would do an informal straw poll to get direct opinion from select board members. I mean, you have taken specific action in the past regarding whether or not to send out a letter. So it's really up to you folks as to what's best. There's no state statute dictating you have to take an action on this matter.
So why don't I take a straw vote? Who's in favor of this amplification of the state and the town's position on COVID-19 measures? So I see Miranda has one, Zahn, it's unanimous. Okay, so we will get that done. And if anybody wants to look at the communication materials, please let Peter know, and or work on those communication materials, let Peter know, and we'll set up a meeting where we can discuss exactly what we want to say. Thank you very much. Snow plow, the Playscape and the BBCC. Peter was going to address that.
So this is just a real brief thing. When Jamie Durham and Don McLean were at our last meeting, they had just asked that our road crew continue even with the limited use of the community center, that there are still a few things happening there, and that the town road crew continue to plow that in the event of snow. Additionally, the Recreation Commission inquired of me to present to the select board as to whether or not the road crew can plow the small parking area for the Playscape on Carpenter Hill Road, so that families may be able to use that space during the winter. Otherwise, it would be closed off to them in the event of snow.
Any discussion about that? So the question is, And I don't think we need a motion for this either, do we? No. The question is then, can the town, will the select board authorize the town highway commission to snowplow the Playscape and the BBCC, the community center? Do I have any, can I take a straw vote on that? Veranda says yes. Rusty, Michael, Zahn, Richard, okay, we're all in agreement. That one's done.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, Marley, are you representing the Conservation Commission this evening?
Linda Lemke is here and she has some very articulate notes she would like to share.
Okay, Linda?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Marley and I are here representing the Conservation Commission, and we've prepared a report to give to you. We'll send it on to Peter Root tomorrow to distribute to you. Tonight, in our few minutes that we have, we just want to summarize what's in the report. 2 years ago, we met with you to tell you about the coming threat of the emerald ash borer in Vermont. And we offered to do an inventory of the ash trees along Guilford's right-of-ways and town properties. You supported that offer. You helped us with a grant that we wrote to obtain iPads to help with the inventory. And our work began. We had the following goals. We wanted to map and assess the condition of ash trees on town roads and right-of-ways and properties. We wanted to identify hazardous trees, and we wanted to create a database that we could update in the years ahead. And our intentions for this inventory were to create maps that could be used to facilitate communication between the select board, the road crew, and the Conservation Commission, and also communication with landowners and residents. We also wanted the road commissioner to be able to use them to communicate with Green Mountain Power. And we wanted you to be able to use the data to calculate a budget for ash tree removal. So beginning in the fall of 2019, we began the inventory, and we worked last fall and through this spring, and we surveyed 81 town roads for a total of 67 miles. We also inventoried 7 town properties and 9 town cemeteries. All in all, 11 volunteers contributed 248 hours of work on this inventory. In September of this year, we received a spreadsheet from Forest Parks and Recreation with all of the data. Altogether, we recorded 2,744 ash trees on Guilford's right-of-ways and town properties. We have a breakdown of the data of the roadside type, whether it's in the utility corridor, whether it's in the right-of-way, of the condition of the trees, and whether we recommend them for priority removal. And these numbers are included in our report. In October, we met with Dan Zembreski, and we asked him what kind of mapping would be most helpful to the road crew. He said paper maps would be helpful, so we worked with Jeff Nugent, who created a 24-page atlas of Guilford roads. He broke the town into 24 quadrants and mapped all of the data that we collected. A copy of that is now in the hands of the road crew, and we intend to print a second copy to keep at the town reference for landowners who might want to reference it. The 2 iPads that we got through the grant are town property, and they're now at the town office. We will use them in future years to update our inventory work. On a final note, we didn't detect the emerald ash borer in Guilford, but we do know that it's been found in Reedsboro and in Londonderry, so that it will likely come to Guilford in the next year or two. We also found many ash trees in poor condition, so there's work to be done. Our report is really to say the work that we offer is completed, and we're turning the data over to the road crew and the select board for the steps ahead. And that includes planning for removal and planning for distribution. We worked with Peter Rood on a grant opportunity in October. Unfortunately, we didn't get the grant. We were hoping to receive another $15,000 to supplement the $10,000 that you budgeted for this year. And that was going to supplement the first removal steps, and also we had a plan for distribution. So we'd like to leave you with these thoughts. Something that really helped us in the inventory was that Forest Parks and Recreation gave us a set of guiding questions to focus our work and help us with communication. And so we suggest to you that as you're thinking about budgeting and communicating with landowners and working with Danny on removal and distribution, that you also ask a set of guiding questions and establish the same kind of protocols that we established for the inventory. In our report, we've suggested some questions that you could ask, such as, how will you communicate with landowners about ash tree removal and distribution? How will you budget in future years? What specifically will be covered by that amount? How will the road crew prioritize tree removal? Does the road crew have plans for disposing of the cut wood? We've already talked to Dan about some of these questions, and we've included his responses in our report. But we encourage you to think them through and to get some things in writing, so that when any town officials are communicating with landowners, we're all operating from the same page about what we're doing as a town, what we're clearing, how we're communicating, and so on. Just very briefly, we're also including something we learned recently, that there's a new tree warden and shade tree law in the state. And we've included that in the report, and the Conservation Commission would like to offer to, as our next project, to inventory the really special trees in this town. We saw some of them in our work, but these might include, just beautiful specimen trees, or trees that frame a view or are on a historic property. And it's something that would complement the work that we're doing with our natural resources inventory and the community values mapping we hope to do this winter. Lastly, we drafted a letter. It needs some editing, but it's something that you could consider when beginning your communication with landowners, and that's included in our report.
Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you for a job well done.
Do you have anything you want to add? Marley? Okay.
Peter, you have your hand up. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say briefly that
presentation
thanks
and
to the work of Linda and Marley and the rest of the conservation commissioners, that Dan and the road crew actually used some of that information from their report and removed about a half dozen trees last week over on Lee Road that were in the right of way and posing some danger. So thanks to the Conservation Commission for providing that information with him that he's already started using.
Okay, so Peter, we will submit this report to you, and also the digital file of the maps that Jeff Nugent did.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, does the select board have any questions or discussion? We've got to move on.
No,
agenda.
I just wanted to say that this was extraordinary work that our Conservation Commission did, and I hope that you'll have the opportunity to share it with other commissions and other towns that are facing the same issues.
Thank you, Veranda. Okay, is Chris here? Chris Curtis?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for sharing some time on your busy agenda with me tonight. I'm here representing the Deerfield River Watershed Association. We're a nonprofit group that does work on river protection and restoration and stewardship along the Deerfield River and its tributaries, including water quality monitoring. DRWA is launching a new initiative to look at whether segments of the Deerfield River and its tributaries could be designated as a national wild and scenic river. The Deerfield River, as you probably know, is a pretty incredible resource and natural asset for our entire region. Has some of the best whitewater boating and rafting in the Northeast, has some of the best trout fishing in all of the East, and has historic significance and some great trails along it and so forth. So we feel like a designation of this sort could provide many benefits to the region. And most notably, they would be protecting those segments of the river that are still free flowing from new federally permitted dams being constructed. And also providing federal grant funds for community-based river restoration or improvement projects. Earlier in my planning career, I worked on the designation of the Westfield River in Massachusetts as a national wild and scenic river, and that was the first one in Massachusetts that got that designation. And the Westfield, that was about 25 years ago now. Westfield has been receiving funds from the National Park Service every year on the order of about $220,000 per year. And that goes to a locally based committee with representatives from each of the towns that are located along the river. And they use it for projects that they identify to try to improve the river and protect the river. And it includes things like water quality monitoring. They do trail work. They've been constructing some hiking trails. They do education projects, all kinds of things, really. So we feel that there could be some significant benefits of doing this. So as a first step, we're doing I guess I'm doing a kind of a virtual tour of the watershed, select boards around the watershed, and working to collect letters of support for an initial study phase, planning study to look at and investigate the possibility of this type of designation and whether or not it makes sense for communities and the river itself. I've met with 12 communities, select boards along the river, and I've gotten votes of support from all 12 of those so far. They include in Massachusetts, Ashfield, Shelburne, Coleraine, Conway, Savoy, Charlemont, Buckland, Greenfield, and Deerfield. And I'm just sort of branching up into the Vermont communities now, and I've talked with Wilmington and Stratton so far, and again, all of them have supported this initiative. I want to just note that there's no cost to your community for this initiative, and I want to just briefly explain kind of what would happen in the process. The first step is really, again, reaching out to the communities and making sure that there is local support for this, because that's fundamental to the whole process. Assuming that there is, and it seems like we're getting good support, the next step is we would approach our Congress people, and there are three congressional representatives in the watershed, to seek their support in getting a study bill filed and ultimately voted on by Congress. The study bill would pay for a phase where we'd look at, the more of the details of designation, what it would mean to the communities, whether certain segments of the river are eligible, things like that. That typically takes a couple of years to do that. And we would involve communities, all of the communities in the watershed would have representation on a committee to guide and have input into that study process. We finish that, assuming that it makes recommendations that there are segments of the river that should be designated. And assuming that the communities once again voice their support, there would be a second opportunity to have a community vote on this. Then we would approach Congress again for a formal designation bill, which would accomplish the full designation process. So your community has the Green River, which is a tributary of the Deerfield. The entire length of the Green River in your community is eligible for designation. It was actually, there was a study already done, which was called the Nationwide Rivers Inventory, and that identified certain segments of the Deerfield and its tributaries that were eligible. So the Green River is one of those segments. So, so your community would be really important to this process. So I will stop right there and see if anybody has questions.
Yeah, are there any questions or discussion? So on the table is whether the select board agrees to write a letter of support, which I imagine Chris is going to write for this designation. Do I have any comments or questions? I don't think we need a motion for this either, do we, Peter? A letter of support?
Generally in the past, the select board has made a motion for letters of support.
Do I have a motion for a letter of support?
I would move that the select board write a letter of support.
Okay, do I have a second?
I will second.
Michael seconded. Thank you, Michael. Is there further discussion? Okay, I shall take the roll. Zahn? Rusty?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Richard? Aye. The motion carries unanimously. And are you going to draft the letter, Chris, or has the letter been drafted?
Yes, I provided a sample letter of support, and I think Peter has that.
Great. Well, I'm glad to say that you have a letter of support from the town of Guilford.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Thank you for your presentation.
Chris, I'll connect with you about that offline.
Okay. All right, moving along. The commission reserve fund transfers. Peter, do you want to speak to this?
Yep. This will just be very brief. The end of every year, any surplus that the various town commissions have needs to be moved from their working fund into their reserve fund. So at the end of the FY20 fiscal year, the Planning Commission had their full appropriation of $1,000. The Conservation Commission had $2,023.66 of their $2,500. And the Cemetery Commission had a total of $44,525.01 of their I believe it was 7,300 that was requested. And so we need an action of the select board to move this to their reserve fund.
So do I have a motion to remove those surplus funds to the reserve fund? I so move. Do I have a second? Miranda seconds. Is there any discussion or questions? Okay, I shall take the roll. Zahn? Rusty?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Richard? Aye. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, on to the Guilford Volunteer Fire Department budget. Peter, do you want to? I don't think that there's a representative of the Guilford of the trustees who is going to speak to this. So, you want to?
No, it does not appear that way. So the last week, the Guilford Volunteer Fire Department had their annual meeting in which they approve their budget and take other actions. And I was contacted by their treasurer, Beth Bristol, and she shared a few things from that meeting that the trustees wanted to put before the select board. The first of which is that the trustees feel in an effort, and this is a direct quote from them, in an effort to provide better transparency and efficiency, the Guilford Volunteer Fire Department decided to include the $35,000 for what they call the building sinking fund for the fire department in their FY22 budget, and instead of having the select board included in their capital budget. And the second request from them from their annual meeting was they wanted to request from the select board how to transfer the $35,000 that was approved at this past town meeting into their reserve fund. That's all I have.
Thank you, Peter. So one interesting aspect of this is that the select board agreed previously that those funds would appear in the Guilford, the town of Guilford's capital budget. So now they're requesting that the funds for 2 years, the previous year and the current year, appear in their capital budget. So I'm taking questions. Rusty, yes.
Does that mean we lose control over the budget and they have the right to discretionary do what they want with the money at that point?
In short, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or discussion? What is the sense? I'd like to take a sense of the select board and which way you're thinking of going before we make a motion to do this. So we would be subverting our previous agreement to keep it in the Guilford town budget and move it to their budget. So we would be contradicting ourselves, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that they asked us initially, the volunteer fire department initially asked us to put it in our budget, and we agreed to do that because we thought that was a good idea. Zon, did you, Rusty? Yeah.
I think we should keep it in our budget. That way we have sort of somewhat control with what goes on with the money. That's my opinion.
Any other comments? Zon? You're muted.
The fire department claims that would increase transparency. I'm not sure I understand why that would be more transparent. Just because it's in their budget, that makes it more transparent. Can someone help me?
I don't know why it would be.
Good questions on. They did not clarify that.
Then I'm inclined to go agree with Rusty.
Okay. Anyone else? Other select board members? Veranda? You're on mute, Veranda.
I know. I mean, I'm concerned that they wanted to make this change, but they didn't send somebody to explain why this was better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if we have to make a decision tonight or whether we could ask them for clarification.
I myself would like to make the decision tonight. Michael, do you have any comments?
I'm inclined to agree with Rusty. I've been a little uncomfortable with this from the start. I mean, it feels like we haven't had a real specific breakdown of what this $35,000 is needed for. I mean, it's kind of directly labeled as a possible future roof, but so I don't know. It feels like we're not getting great information as far as what this money is needed for.
Okay. Sheila, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I think that for a number of years, the fiscal interactions between the town and the Guilford Fire Department have been less than clear and standardized. And this seems like a really good opportunity to get to ask some specific questions about how they present their financial information to the town and to the town report, and what they're asking the town for and what role the town plays in helping that, and also whether or not the town needs to be raising funds, a capital reserve fund for its own things, but maybe include the fire department in those or not. And so maybe we could look at this from the Finance Advisory Committee and the fire department and see if we can make a recommendation to the town, and it's also with the select board, but I feel like it's a little murky.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Sheila. Do I have a motion in this regard?
I'll make the motion to keep it in the capital preservation fund.
Okay, in Guilford, the town of Guilford.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay, I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I shall take the roll. Zahn,
Aye.
Rusty,
Aye.
Miranda,
I'm abstaining because I don't really properly understand it.
okay, Michael,
Aye.
Richard, aye. So the motion carries with one abstention. Yes,
There-
Sheila.
Richard, there might be an action from this. A next step that we need to explore before we.
Well, I was just about to say, I would like it now, the Finance Advisory Committee to meet with the Guilford Volunteer Fire Department and see whether you can straighten out what's going on. And we will inform them that the select board voted to put it in the Guilford budget. But I mean, it can always change if we have some further clarification, because we're right now in the budgeting process. So it could change if we have further clarification. And if the Finance Advisory Committee makes a recommendation that is contrary to what the select board just voted, we would certainly entertain that. Zahn?
No.
Oh, Peter.
Yes, I would just wanted to say that based on the discussion, to recommend that I will compile all of the questions from the various select board members, and then Richard and I can discuss those to make sure that they cover all of the topics that were addressed, and I will request feedback from the fire department on those questions.
Great, thank you. Okay, on to town commission budgets. This was a question of whether we can fund some of those budgets with reserve funds. Is that correct, Peter?
Yes.
Yeah. So we do have. Can you amplify that in regard to how much reserves we have, and what the process would be?
Sure. So in response to last week's select board budget meeting for fiscal year 22, due to the potential that the town may be impacted by COVID in this upcoming FY22 fiscal year, that as well as due to the fact that the Planning Commission, Conservation Commission, and Cemetery Commissions all have very healthy reserve funds at this point in time. There was a question from one of the Finance Advisory Committee members as to whether or not, given the situation just described, if the select board would consider funding the various commissions partially from their own existing reserve funds, and or partial from the budget, or partial from the town's reserve fund. One thing that also came out from that is that during the current FY21 fiscal year, the select board reserve fund is overfunded by just over $80,000, and the select board needs to spend down some of that funds. And that could be an additional option on top of reserve funds for each commission. So at this time, I apologize, I don't have in front of me the current balance of the reserve fund for each of the various commissions.
You did send it out, so I think we have it.
Yeah,
I did. You are correct, Miranda.
I have it, Peter, if you want.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm sorry, I forgot to get that in front of me.
but I don't think we need to break it down to the reserve funds. What we're really talking about is what percentage we might. I mean, unless we want to do a different percentage for each of the commissions. But it seems like could we just have a blanket 50-50 or some percentage like that, given that we have a lot of reserve money that we need to get rid of.
Is this in an effort to lower the taxes for 1 year?
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, it seems like a nice idea. And I guess my only concern is just, I think I've heard this expressed before, that if we do that once, then there's an expectation that every year going forward, there should be residents will have an expectation that this will happen every year.
Well, we can make the motion clearly state that it's for this fiscal
Just-
year. Yeah. And reinforce that with the commissions, if that's the way we choose to go.
And I think that we're living in a, exceptional year as it stands.
Mhm. Any other select board members want to contribute to this discussion? Okay, Sheila, did you want to say something?
I think you can fund 100% of the commission budget requests with their reserve budgets, with what's in their reserve funds. And then if they need further funding, you can take it from the general reserve fund. I
So
think
what
there
would that
are
total be that
other uses for the general reserve fund.
what would the total be? Do you have it in front of you what the total would be that we would be taking from the reserve funds to fund all the commissions? 100%?
We can answer that question on Wednesday. I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
you could be up to 100% if it works, if you want to make that kind of motion.
Okay, yeah. Peter?
So I do tentatively support that idea. My only concern about that is I do know that last year the Conservation Commission did make a commitment for their, I'm going to butcher the name of it, but they hired a consultant from the Brattleboro Environmental Education Center to help them with their natural resources inventory. And they did commit to that for a 2-year period, of which they've spent about half of it. So I do know they were intending to do some of that work out of their reserve fund.
I'd like to propose that we do a 50-50. Does anybody object to that or want to comment on that? Does anybody agree with me?
That sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
I'm in favor.
Okay, do
I
I
also
have
agree with that.
any further discussion? Do I have a motion?
You could move it, Richard, since it's your idea.
I move that we fund the commissions with 50% toward the annual budget and 50% from the reserve fund. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Rusty. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I shall take the roll. Zon?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Brenda?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Richard? Aye, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, on to law enforcement services. Do you want to speak to that, Peter, or shall I?
I can. This is a topic that has, before I do that, I'm just sorry. I missed who seconded that last motion.
Rusty.
Thank you. Anyhow, so this has been a topic that has apparently come up quite a few times over the past 15 plus years. For a long time, the town has contracted either with the Windham County Sheriff or with the Vermont State Police to provide traffic enforcement in town. That has averaged approximately 8 hours per month for a contract of approximately $7,000 a year. There has a former select board member noted that part of this discussion has been that in the past that one reason not to do so is that the police presence in town does encourage residents to abide by traffic laws. It is also a fairly substantial individual line item within the select board budget. And there could be an argument made that the town in general benefits little from this. On average, I think it's the last report I saw, the Vermont State Police issues about 4 citations a month. So, it's 1 citation every 2 hours of their work. And yes, we do, the highway department gets a very small fee for that, but it's
So the question
difficult.
is, do we want to have law enforcement or don't we for the tune of $7,000 a year? And which is how many hours all total? 200 or something?
96 hours a year.
96 hours a year. And do we think that that we have it's value added to have a cop on the block for those number of hours? And I can speak from experience. I've met that police officer, the traffic regulator, only once. So does anybody have any questions, or do you have any comments about what select board?
I think I'm in favor of keeping the small, limited police presence that we have. I was talking with a family member, and besides speeding, another concern is drunk driving. And I think if the word gets out that there's just zero enforcement whatsoever, it could become my understanding is that Guilford, I mean, you can see the beer cans on the side of the road that people do drive around as it is now. And so I think we should have some kind of presence and
Thank you, Michael.
just keeping
Anyone
an
else
eye on
wanna-
things.
Veranda?
I'm not, I don't know whether we have any option in asking for coverage during a particular time or place, or whether with the contract, we just get whatever is convenient and doable for them. You know, in other words, if we're concerned about driving under the influence, then it would be nice to have somebody patrolling somewhere in the evening, but I don't know whether that's an option for us to pick.
I can answer that
Peter?
question, Richard.
Yeah.
So in short, the select board can and has in the past made requests to both the state police as well as the sheriff, when the sheriff was previously in this role, to patrol specific areas. We receive no guarantee from the Vermont State Police that they will be able to do so, nor do they provide us any guarantee of time of day of those services. The reason being is that this is a service that they provide as overtime to their patrol officers. And so it is not part of their regular daily schedule. So it happens at the beginning or the end of the shift for the patrol officer that gets selected.
Thank you, Peter. Any further comments from the select board?
I
Okay,
really
Sheila?
don't think, well, go ahead, Sheila.
Go ahead, Rusty.
I'm just saying, I don't think it's much of a deterrent. I mean, I'd imagine if they really got bad, we could, come in a future session and bring it back, but I'd like to try to not have it.
Okay, Sheila, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm going to second what Rusty said. I think if we try for a year without it and divert those funds to your speed is this signs, that we will have made an investment that will benefit the town over the long run, and answer a whole bunch of questions that I keep getting from different people in town.
Thank you.
About what
Anyone
we're doing.
else? Sarah, did you want to add to that? I'm trying to speed us up a little bit. This is getting to be a very long meeting.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask my question to Peter another time. I think it's very curious in Vermont how we fund police and law enforcement, and it's a real challenge for small towns. I just wanted to chime in to say, I hear from constituents, like they reach out to me when they're having issues with law enforcement and, not responding to different things. So maybe maybe I can talk with Peter to understand a little bit
Okay,
more.
Sarah, thank you. Yeah, that's a good point.
And Richard, we should just make clear to residents that this does not mean that there will be no police service for Guilford. Guilford is still covered by the Vermont State Police for all criminal actions. This is simply in reference to a contract the town hires for traffic enforcement within town.
Okay, so any further discussion? Does someone want to make a motion?
Yep. I move that we discontinue the contract with the state police for the coming year and to reevaluate later.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, I'll take the roll. The motion is to discontinue the $7,000 contract with the police. Zahn?
Aye.
Rusty?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Richard? Nay. So the ayes have it. We will discontinue the police service. I just would explain my vote nay. I think that there is value in having a police presence in the town for folks coming out of town, and that we've had a heightened criminality in this town. And I just think seeing a whiff of a state policeman could help with the degree of unlawfulness in our town. So that's why I voted nay. But the motion carries to discontinue. Okay, on to salary increases. The current draft budget has a 3% increase across the board for town. It's a theoretical one for all town salaries, and at the finance advisory committee, no, at the budget meeting, there was some questioning of whether that's a high amount given COVID and the economic situation of the town, which this year happens to be good but may not be in the following year. So we were interested in what your thoughts about it, because we do have to set, it could be no increase, or it could be some increase, or it could be what's currently in the draft budget, a 3% increase. The current Social Security cost of living increase is 1.3%. Zahn.
Has there ever been a policy in which the Guilford Select Board has set a policy of having the increases ride with the Social Security number or at a percentage above?
No, Zahn.
No.
It was consistent like that. So it's an annual decision that the Select Board makes.
This is correct.
And we're left to bank it however we like it based on what we feel ought to be happening.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I would say it would be based on performance too.
Well, sure, but yeah. No, I would say
Peter,
no.
sorry, Richard, I disagree. It's
Oh,
not
no,
a
that's right.
merit.
It can't be based on performance. Yeah, this one is not
It
based
should
on
not be
performance.
merit
That's
based. It should be strictly based on just an agreed upon
Yes.
cost of
living increase. Yeah.
Increase, yeah, and whether 3% is the right number for this particular year.
Yes. And it's in the draft budget is 3%. Do any other select board members have anything to comment about what your opinion of that salary increase is or not?
I guess I'm of two minds about it. On one hand, I feel as if our town employees have proven themselves to be essential workers during a very stressful year, and that I would like to recognize that. On the other hand, I'm concerned about the financial stress of our townspeople, so I'm still trying to make up my mind about what's best.
Okay, Rusty, do you want to add anything, or Michael?
Well, I think in this thing, I should probably abstain.
Okay. I wonder why.
I think
good call there, Rusty. Michael?
It seems to me the real cost of living is higher than the number that we're hearing. Just the reality of what housing costs and food in where we live. I think it's higher than that number. That's just how I feel.
So would you advocate for the 3%, or you would like it to go higher?
I would, and I also feel like, I mean, it sounds to me we are giving residents a little bit of a break. There's going to be a small decrease in taxes this year, from what I can gather.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I'd like to recognize the work that the town employees have done during this stressful time.
Thank you, Michael. Peter, did you have your hand up?
Yes, and I just, for full transparency disclosure, I will note that as a town employee, I may have benefit from this discussion, but I would just add 2 points touching on what Michael and specifically noted just now is that the difference between 1% and 3% is actually fairly minimal. And Dan did the calculation for the road crew when I met with him to discuss the budget last week. And for a 3% increase for the entire road crew would be about $4,200 for the entire fiscal year. The second point to note is that the hourly rate for Guilford employees is generally less than most of the other communities within Windham County, just as a note.
Peter, anybody else have any, Sheila?
Sorry, Richard, I know you want to go quickly. I think, so I'm, as part of the Finance Advisory Committee, I'm the one who's raised this question on a repeat basis of whether we need to do less than 3% this year. I am reassured that with the $80,000 that we have in the reserve fund, that we can apply those funds elsewhere to reduce taxes even more than we've talked about tonight, as well as acknowledge the amazing job that town employees have done this year, particularly without penalizing them by reducing a 3% increase. So I would recommend that you second.
Thank you for that recommendation, Sheila. Zahn?
I agree with Sheila. I like the idea of 3% for the employees and finding other ways for the town to benefit rather than putting that benefit on the shoulders of our employees.
Good point. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion then.
I'll move that we keep the for this year that we keep the salary increase at 3%.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll say one more thing, but let's go with that and say one more
Okay,
thing.
did Veranda seconded? Is there any further discussion? Okay, I shall take the roll. Zahn?
Aye.
Rusty?
I will abstain.
Okay, Veranda?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Richard? Aye. So the motion carries with an abstention. Thank you very much. And I think that we're doing right by the folks who work to make our town the best place in the world to live. Need I say more? Oh, okay, let's move. Would anyone mind if we table the updates till next time? Would you mind, Zahn, tabling your update? And Peter, we're all getting updates. I'm getting a daily update, I know, from the state on COVID, and I think that all the select board members. Does anybody mind if we table those?
I have no problem, Richard. It's at the wish of the select board.
Okay, well, the select board is wishing that we table it. Zahn?
You need to table any items where we are at in the agenda. Somebody needs to make a formal motion to table the items and list the items to be tabled.
I so move that we table the updates of COVID and DVFiber. Do I have a second? Miranda seconds. Is there any discussion? I'll take the roll. Zahn?
Aye.
Rusty?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Richard, aye. So that motion carries unanimously. Now, Zahn, you had your hand up?
Well, I one little point. It's maybe not little, but I feel strange as a select board member, just sort of every year making some sort of what feels to me like a rather arbitrary decision about whether or not to adjust salaries. I would like there to be some sort of policy or some sort of thinking about it. And I don't know if that should come from the Financial Advisory Committee or if that needs to come from the Select Board, and not for this year, but going forward. I just wish.
Okay, I think that's a great suggestion, Zahn. So why don't we put that on an agenda, a future agenda soon? And I think that that's a point very well taken. And I think that the Finance Advisory Committee can consult with us on what they think and their expertise and their acuity of mind in regard to salary raises annually. Okay, so now we're on to the warrants. Who's that? Is that
Okay.
Scorch?
Okay, yes. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. I move that we pay the following warrants. 11/29/20 for the tune of $6,206.05 for the week of 12/6/20 for $6,181.59. Payroll week 12/13/20 for $6,179.44, and expense warrant number 2011 for $14,470.67, for a total of $33,037.75.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Is there any discussion? Okay, I shall take the roll. Zahn?
Aye.
Rusty?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Michael? Richard? Aye. Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you very much, Miranda and Peter, for the warrants. Okay, on to, we're getting close to that time. Actions from the previous meeting. Every time I look at Sarah's picture, I think she's smiling at me.
She is.
So Richard, we had two communications, and they were just thank you letters to the town.
Oh, I'm
from
sorry,
two.
I forgot that. Yeah.
It's okay. I won't read the letters, but they were from two of the social service agencies thanking the town for the annual appropriations.
Great.
Actions from the previous meeting where the select board approved the annual funds transfer, approved amendments to the dog ordinance. The select board rescinded their previous decision on holding a dog hearing. The select board moved to send letters on the dog incident to complainants and the dog owners. Add a discussion of the Guilford Volunteer Fire Department capital funds to the select board budget meeting, which was done. Richard and I were to draft letters to be sent to the dog owners and complainants, and find an attorney to review the letter to the dog owners, all of which was done. Unfortunately, because of the length of this meeting and the details, I do not have the actions taken or to be taken at this point in time, and can update the select board at a later time.
Okay, thank you. That is, the sooner the better on that, Peter, please.
I will do so tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Yes, Zahn?
I move that we adjourn.
Oh, okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, I shall take the roll. That's Zahn.
Aye.
Rusty?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Richard? Aye. The motion carries unanimously. I will just say that we may, the meeting is adjourned, but I just want to make one comment, if I might, that Peter and I will be working on this dog business, and we will get back to you if we need to meet and discuss that further. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening. Have a glass of wine on me. Why don't you?